day is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. The vine still clings to the moldering wall, but at every gust the dead leaves fall, and the day is dark and dreary. My life is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. My thoughts still cling to the moldering past, but the hopes of youth fall thick in the blast, and the days are dark and dreary. Be still, sad heart, and cease repining. Behind the clouds is the sun still shining. Thy fate is the common fate of all. Into each life some rain must fall. Some days must be dark and dreary. Though the image of the rainy day Henry Wadsworth Longfellow paints in this poem is dark and dreary, there is still a sense of hope that emerges by the end of the piece. In the opening two stanzas, Longfellow laments all the ways in which rain makes life more difficult. Dark days, the dampness and the chill in the air, the hopes of youth drifting away. But in the final stanza, the tone shifts and becomes hopeful and accepting. Behind the clouds is the sun still shining. Into each life some rain must fall. Some days must be dark and dreary. Rain can be both repressive and restorative. Rain can bring both darkness and the possibility of new life, new beginnings. In the Jewish ritual calendar, today, Shemini Atzeret, is the day we start praying for rain. As Californians, we certainly have a unique and rather complicated relationship with the rain. We understand the myriad ways in which rain brings forth life, sustenance, and renewal to our lands. We also know all too well the dangers that come with a lack of rain. Our state is still on fire. The dry, brittle forests transformed from lush greenery to dangerous kindling over years of drought. But our tradition, like Longfellow, recognizes the complexities inherent in the rain, the beauty and the power, the delight and the danger. From Passover through Sukkot, which essentially corresponds to the dry season in Israel, we pray that God brings dew as part of the Giverot prayer, which is all about God's might and power. In the Torah, there's a theological reckoning of the gift of rain in its season and the curse of rain when it falls outside its appointed times, recognizing their potential danger. Indeed, in the desert climate of the Middle East, those rare summer rains can cause all sorts of destruction, like flash floods, destroying crops and endangering large swaths of the population. And despite the focus on the harvest and bounty and the pastoral nature of Sukkot, we don't start praying for rain until the conclusion of the holiday. Why? Mainly because the rabbis understood that during the pilgrimage festival of Sukkot, rain may not be received as a welcome guest. And anyone who has celebrated Sukkot east of California probably knows how sad a rainy, or even worse, a snowy Sukkot evening can be. Not so fun to have rain splashing in your soup, bits of schach falling into your meal. And so the rabbis decided that the prayers for rain should begin immediately after Sukkot, on Shemini Atzeret. This is not to say that our Sukkot traditions don't hint at rain. So many of our Sukkot symbols and rituals are connected to far older pre-Jewish traditions of rain. Think about the sound the lulav makes when you shake it, kind of like a rain stick. The four species we shake all around us are each connected to different agricultural regions of Israel. And the arava, the willow, in particular, grows near the river. When the temple stood in Jerusalem, there was a special ritual known as Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the water libation, literally rejoicing at the place of the water drawing, that was performed throughout Sukkot. But the rabbis of the first century believed that prayer was so efficacious that we didn't dare pray for rain until its appropriate time, after Sukkot was over and the pilgrims were on their way homes. on their way to their homes. In our Siddur, our prayer book, the prayer for rain is inserted into the Geverot prayer, the second prayer in the Amidah, and takes the place of the insertion for dew, which we say over the summer, Morid Hatal, you bring down the dew, recited in the summer months. The Geverot is all about God's power and might, and describes God as the giver of all life, who supports those who fall, heals the sick, and frees those in captivity. In fact, the more traditional language of this prayer presents a God so powerful that God might even revive the dead, Mechayei Metim. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer calls this insertion Gevurot Geshamim, the might of the rains, for it reads, Mashiv haruach umorid hagasham, you cause the wind to shift and the rain to fall, an acknowledgement of God as the source of the power of nature. If you think about it, the connection between rain and God's ability to give life makes perfect sense. After all, what does rain do? It restores life to otherwise arid land. It has the power to cleanse and renew and completely change a landscape from dead and dry to green and teeming with life. Eliyahu Kitov teaches, rain is like the resurrection of the dead. For seeds from dead and dry, for seeds that lie buried in the dry ground, sprout and rise through the gift of rain. Because rain is seen as so crucial to our existence, on Shemini Atzeret, this insertion is traditionally welcomed with great pomp and circumstance, including an extra prayer celebrating its arrival. This prayer calls on the merits of our ancestors and their connection to the water, that we might merit the gift of water as well. Our God and God of our ancestors, remember Abraham. His heart poured out to you like water. You blessed him as a tree planted near water. You saved him when he went through fire and water. For Abraham's sake, do not withhold water. Remember one who laughed, cascading laugh like water, whose way of women you resumed, blood flowing out as water. The babes of kingdoms from her breast she nursed with milk like water. Her children you made numerous as sea sand by the water. For Sarah's sake, send water. Remember Isaac, his birth foretold while angels drank cool water. At Moriah his blood was almost spilled like water. In the desert he dug deep to find springs of water. For Isaac's sake, grant the gift of water. Remember the one who in her youth went down to draw well water. A wary servant asked her for a little drink of water. She hastened, drawing until the camels all drank water. Blessing for her son she got by going around like water. For Rivka's sake, send water. Remember Jacob, who with his staff forded Jordan's water. Gallantly he showed his love beside a well of water. He struggled victoriously with a creature of fire and water. For Jacob's sake, do not withhold water. Remember one whose eyes got soft. Her tears flowed down with water. Who had to fill the lack of love in secrecy. Like water, her sister met her love in kiss and tears upon the well of water. For her children's pain she's weeping still, shedding tears like water. For Leah and Rachel's sake, send water. Remember Moses, whose basket rocked in reeds and water. In Midian he gave his sheep ample grass and water. He struck the rock, then the people drank sweet water. For Moses' sake, grant the gift of water. Remember one who watched through reeds, her brother float on water. Who with her drum swept circles of dancing dames on water. Her merit gifted your thirsty flock with a miraculous well of water. Her prophecy in times of doubt flowed from you like water. For Miriam's sake, send water. Remember Israel's tribes. You brought them through water. Brackish marsh became for their sake sweet water. For you, their descendants' blood was spilled like water. For all Israel's sake, grant the gift of water. She'atahu Adonai Eloheinu, Mashiv haruach umorid hagasham. You are Adonai our God, who causes the wind to blow and the rain to fall. We place our hope for water today upon the merits of those who came before us. As we enter Yizkor, we too call to mind the memory and the merits of our dear ones whom we have lost. We recall the lessons of parents and grandparents, the gifts of love and tenderness, of lost loves and dear friends. We allow our tears to flow freely like rain. Like rain, our tears can water our aching hearts and soothe our weary souls. We hold their memories close. Stories like seeds must be sown and tended to, and gently watered with loving and caring hands. Behind the clouds is the sun still shining. Thy fate is the common fate of all. Into each life some rain must fall. Some days must be dark and dreary. Our lives are not without dark and rainy days, and sometimes the dank darkness seems to linger and feel inescapable. But we must remember, behind the clouds is the sun still shining. As we enter Yizkor, may we find light and comfort in the presence of this gathered community. And when the rains do come, may we appreciate their power to refresh and renew, to cleanse and heal.